Joining me today, I actually don't know how to describe her. She is a high-powered female executive slash currently board member of a lot of companies here in the Philippines, and also world marathon majors, I would say veteran.
Yeah.
Riza Mantaring. Riza, welcome to Methods to Greatness.
Hi, John. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Last time we were together, we were running
Yes.
in UP.
Yes, and I was running after you.
No, I beg to disagree. No, that's the thing, because I'm a sprinter. As we have discussed before, I'm a sprinter. You're a long-distance runner. People know you really from the corporate world, right? You are a high-powered female executive, one of the best we've ever seen in this country. Very well-known female leader who has led, well, at that time, Sun Life to extraordinary heights of success.
That's very kind of you.
But you know, it's something that a big part of you, but amazingly not just the only part that is amazing about what you do, because you are also a very accomplished runner. Started late in life at a sport that a lot of people really have a hard time in, just because it is just pure grit and willpower sometimes. But before we get there, for those who maybe are not so familiar with your journey in business and in leading people, where would be a good place to start to kind of give us an idea of how you started as an executive, maybe just starting out, penetrating the corporate world?
When I started out, I actually never wanted to be a leader. I never wanted to manage people. In my first job, I told my boss I never want to manage people.
Okay.
I had graduated from computer science and electrical engineering, and I said, you know, machines are easy, people are hard to deal with. But somehow, I don't know, he must have seen something in me, put me through supervisor development, until eventually I was managing a project team already. It just grew, and then I got hired eventually by Sun Life to head the Information Technology Department for Asia Pacific, which sounds, you know, really high-powered, but in reality, Sun Life was very small at that time. It was just 3 countries, and the IT department was 24 people.
Okay, what year was this?
This was in 1992. During my term as a IT head, I built it up. By the time I left, we were already over 100. We had implemented numerous systems. I got moved to operations because I had told my boss, even when they hired me, I didn't want to stay in IT forever.
Okay.
So I moved to operations, became head of operations for the Philippines, and then just got progressively bigger and bigger roles until I became chief operating officer, and then became the Chief Operations Officer for Sun Life Asia. By that time, 7 countries already. Wow. And I was in charge of IT and operations across Asia until I was offered the job of CEO of the Philippines because the CEO was retiring. I turned it down.
You turned down the role of CEO?
Yes, I did. I think my boss was shocked because, you know, it's like everybody wants to be CEO. Why would you turn down the role? He spent the next hour telling me all the reasons why I should accept it, trying to convince me. And then he said, go back to the Philippines, talk to your husband. We'll talk again in 2 weeks. Went back, I talked to him, and he said, I don't think you have a choice. I talked to the other people in the office, and they were saying, please accept it. And they said, because otherwise, we don't know who we'll get. We might get someone we don't want, and someone you don't want either. So I felt like a sacrificial lamb.
Okay.
But I accepted it. The first 5 weeks, I felt like, my God, everything's coming at me. It was like 24/7. We were encountering problems that we had never encountered in the past. Like, we got picketed, but the picket had nothing to do with the Philippines. It was about something happening in our operations in the US, also, which had no basis either. So I had to deal with things like those. And I thought, I might not last 5 months, let alone 5 years. But, you know, after 5 months, I realized, hey, I wasn't noticing anything. I'd gotten used to it.
You got used to the pressure.
Got used to the pressure. I got used to everything having to handle a much bigger organization than I was used to, having to handle areas I'd not handled before.
From someone who before did not even want to work with people or handle people or manage people. Now you are head of an organization with how many headcount that time?
In the head office, about 500. And in the agency was probably 2,500.
2,500 people.
By the time I left, over 1,000 in the head office, about 15,000 in the agency force.
So, what was that like for someone who originally said, okay, I don't want to deal with people, I don't want to manage, but now it is such a big organization. I'm sure you do not know each and every single person there, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, key to that would be your relationship perhaps with the leaders within the organization.
Yes.
What was that like?
One of the things I found out, when I was in IT is very logical, right? It's all deadlines, project, very clear deliverables. When I got moved to operations, one of the first things I realized was forget your logic. When you're dealing with agents, you have to get rid of your logic and understand the emotions, because a lot of it's driven by emotion. Then you learn that, okay, what's really behind it? Why is he saying this? What's behind what he's saying?
You're talking about
and
the customer,
behind
right?
that, no, not just the customer,
Okay.
but the people in the office,
Oh, okay.
the
okay.
employees, the financial advisors. It's really throw out your logic. You needed to understand what was driving them and what was driving what they were saying. It's an entirely different world. But one of the things that maybe grown up with my parents was, whatever you do it well. Study what you're doing until you get to do it well. It was just a constant understanding what I had to do, what I had to deliver. Just trying to do my best, whatever it was. I adjusted to that role too. I've always been a pretty, I would say, fairly good communicator.
Okay.
But now I had to talk in front of
Right.
thousands of people. One of my bosses, early in my career in Sun Life, said, Riza, now you have a group, small group, and you can talk to every single one of them, build relationships. He said, but as you go up the organization, how do you continue to touch those people when there are layers of people now between you? At that time, I just said, yeah, okay. But then later, I began to realize what he meant. How do you continue to motivate every single person in the organization? And I realized that the higher you go, the less important your technical skills or managerial skills become, and the more important your communication skills
Your
become.
people skills.
The people skills, the communication skills. That communication skill, that skill had to be not just one-on-one, but talking to 10 people, to 100 people, to 1,000 people. And then it became hundreds of thousands of people when I had to appear on TV.
Right.
I remember the very first time I had to do a press con, I told the marketing people, what? A press con? You mean I have to face the media? And they said yes. And I said, I'm a nerd, remember? I told them I'm a nerd. And then they said, Riza, they said, 25 to 30% of the image of the company is the CEO. He said, you have to do these interviews. And I did. I had to learn to do all of that. So it was a constant adjustment. And by the time I retired, a lot of the media people had become my friends.
As you transition from, you said so yourself, you're very good with one-on-one, with a small group. How is, for people out there who are just starting maybe to get bigger and bigger roles in their jobs or in their careers, how does one learn the skill of communicating to, let's say, a bigger group? So a lot of people, I would think, are okay with one-on-one conversations, but how is a one-on-one different from a 1 to 10 people or a 1 to 100 people, or maybe addressing the whole company, 1,000 people? How are you different, not just in your words, but in the manner by which you deliver your message?
One of the things that Sun Life did with senior executives was put them through workshops on dealing with the media, public speaking. But it was a different kind of workshop. I remember with the public speaking one, they got a group of people who were actors to come and talk to us and put us through the workshop. Yeah, it was really interesting. So what they did, they gave us tips, but they observed us. So they taught us basics like when you're in front of a big group, you have to have bigger gestures, okay? Because you have to be seen from afar.
Right.
In TV, in one-on-one, smaller gestures, don't move around too much because it's distracting. But the most important lesson they taught us was you have to be authentic. They said, you're able to really come across and communicate well when people perceive you as being authentic. You can't pretend to be someone you're not. And that actually was quite a revelation for me, that an actor whose job it is to pretend to be someone else,
right?
tell you that when you're on stage, you have to be authentic.
You have to project something, but you cannot not be yourself.
Yes.
Right?
That's the biggest lesson that they taught us, so don't pretend to be someone you're not. That gave a lot of comfort to a lot of us, that you don't have to be someone who's this big orator
They don't
or
have to be a
something.
Riza, right? Was there anyone that you looked up to? Like,
Not really.
you never like idolized anyone? Or...
Not really.
Okay.
At one point in my life, I wanted to be a newscaster.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I remembered my model was Tina Monzon Palma.
Oh,
I thought she
wow.
was great at delivering the news and
yes.
communicating.
So for people who are listening or watching this who do not know who Tina Monzon Palma is, one of the OGs of broadcasting.
Yes.
And she was on air for such a long time.
Yep, a legend.
Legendary. What was it about her manner, her style that you looked up to, or maybe you picked up a few things from her?
Because when she spoke, she was authoritative. And also when she spoke, you just knew that she was telling you the truth.
Right. And she was not just reading off of the teleprompter,
No.
right?
Yes.
Because I know people like her, they don't just read, they really are in the newsroom, they gather the information, and they themselves lead a team. So what you see on camera is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
Because there's so much work that happens
Exactly.
before they get into that newscast.
That was also one thing that I learned, right? A lot of people, the first time you face a camera, you're hesitant, you're nervous, you're afraid. But I always prepared really well. If I was given a set of 10 questions, I'd read up not just on those, but on the entire background, so that whatever they asked me, I would be more confident in answering.
Right.
So preparation gives you confidence. I had a 3-minute stint on BBC when I was in Singapore once on Obama's visit to the Philippines. I read material for 3 or 6 hours for that 3-minute stint, so that whatever you're asked, you're able to answer right. Because one thing I realized is whatever set of guide questions they give you, they're not going to follow it.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
even for this interview, I'm hardly going to
I know.
to ask you what you read in terms of what was sent to you prior. But what was that like, being on that BBC interview? I know it's probably, because you mentioned it, it's probably a very important thing for you. I mean, it is a big deal. Recalling that, were you happy with your quote-unquote performance because you had prepared well
Yes.
for it?
I think so. I think it came across well. At least that's what other people told me, that it came across very well. 3-minute segment, but I was able to put in a lot of meat on a topic that I wasn't really an expert at.
Right. I'm sure whatever it is that you researched, at the end of the day, it was still your authentic
Yes.
ideas,
Yes.
opinions that resonated with the people who saw that interview. They were looking to you for, I guess, your opinion on the matter, but at the end of the day, they asked you these questions not because of what you know about the subject, but because of who you are. Because you've gone through so much and you've led these organizations. It's really your lived experience of having done all of this that you can't replicate, you can't read in a book.
Yes,
right?
exactly. At the end of the day, you digest everything you read and then you distill it into your own view and give your own view. So I would never say anything I didn't believe, because I think that would come across that I didn't really believe what I was saying.
Right.
Always make sure that it's really my view of based on what I read.
Was there any point in time when you felt that you were pressured to give a statement or say something you were not 100% confident at or believed in?
Not really. I would say more like sometimes I had to be very careful in how I phrased something or how I couched something, because you also have to be careful not to upset people or say something that maybe is not exactly the view of other people in the organization. So you have to be careful if you're there to represent an organization, for
Right.
example, that you represent really the views of the organization, not your own personal views. At the same time, be careful to express only the parts you believe in and be careful about the parts you don't.
That's the thing. I was in Dubai recently. I spoke with this podcaster. He's actually Emirati. And he said that when he did his interviews, you would see the very big difference between, for example, an entrepreneur that he would interview and someone who, let's say, leads a very big organization. Because the entrepreneur, can pretty much say what they want. It's their opinion, and they have very strong opinions.
Yes.
They can curse all they want. But someone who has led a big organization does not have that same liberty.
Yes.
Because of the fact that you represent your organization and there are other stakeholders that are watching possibly that interview. How do you make sure that you are being authentic, but at the same time also being responsible as the steward of that organization, making sure that you project or say the things that the stakeholders and the public need to hear and not necessarily what you want to say.
Yes. So there are guidelines. At least in Sun Life, when I was the CEO, we had guidelines that we had to follow. So nothing political. Very careful about that because as a multinational, you don't want to be seen as interfering in local politics. Make sure you follow the guidelines. And then I'd also consult with the other people. For example, I'd be asked my views on the economy. I talk to our investments people, I talk to finance people just to make sure that the view I represent is the company view and not just my own personal views on a topic like that. Could be completely wrong, right?
Right.
So make sure that you consult the appropriate people in the organization to make sure that I'm representing a collective view.
Very interesting. As someone who's led, Sun Life back in the day, you led it to be number one.
Yeah.
Being a female high-power CEO, I would imagine that there would be so many young women back then who were inspired by your position, what you were doing, what you stood for, who maybe are now in the corporate world also aspiring to be what you were. So imagine there's an up-and-coming young female executive right in front of you. You have maybe a minute or two to impart advice. What would be the best advice that you could possibly give to her?
So the first thing I'd say would be forget you're female. I find that a lot of women box themselves in by saying that I can't do it because I'm female subconsciously, or I'm being discriminated against because I'm female. Or you present an idea that got rejected, it's because I'm female. It could be because it's a lousy idea, right? Secondly, that don't put limits on yourself. You find that if you don't put limits on yourself, there's no limit to what you can do. You go as far as you're willing to work for.
That's very interesting that you phrase it that way, that don't even think of you being female, because I'm very much exposed to groups. I know personally some people who that really is their advocacy, to advocate for more female leaders to be out there, take on more leadership roles. It is a conversation not just worth having, but a conversation that you really have more executives, leaders, entrepreneurs banding together, creating conversations that need to be talked about. But now you're sort of going the opposite way in saying that maybe that's not even the issue. So that's a very interesting perspective, because I think that comes from someone who's done it and who has succeeded, is way beyond, those traditional boundaries that I guess maybe someone who has not achieved what you have would put themselves under. What would be your thoughts on that?
I'm not saying it's the other way, right? I'm actually part of the Filipina CEO Circle, and one of our advocacies is developing more of female executives. The mindset is one thing, but there are also real problems that women face. For example, if you have children, they feel obliged to be the one to primarily care for the children, right? So how do we help women overcome these barriers? But what I'm saying is, in terms of work, don't think of yourself, don't think being female is a disadvantage to you. That's why I'm saying forget you're female. Throughout my career, I've realized that if you treat men as an equal, they'll treat you as an equal. If you don't think of yourself as inferior, a lot of guys are actually pretty broad, open-minded.
Right, open, yeah.
Especially the younger generation. A lot of them are more willing to be the house husband.
Right.
If the wife is doing better, right? That's what I mean by saying forget you're female. Because thinking that I'm a female, I can't do this, you're putting boundaries on yourself. And I'm always saying no limits. As a female executive, some of us, we're heads, the FCC is heads of some of the largest corporations. Part of the advocacy is really try to help these younger women up the leadership path. I agree that we should try to help them. Although sometimes I joke, it's the men that need more help. Because
I tend to agree with that.
It's statistical. I saw the statistics from the Philippine Statistics Authority. I was really surprised. There are more women in senior positions than there are men. And on the average, they're paid higher.
We're talking about where?
In the Philippines. Yes,
okay.
In the Philippines, because it's PSA, right?
Okay.
But when it gets to the CEO position, that's where the drop-off is. But that's at the C-level, you see so many women.
Okay, that's interesting.
But a lot of them, like me, when you're offered the CEO position, say no. So it drops to about, I think, just 1/4. We had some very promising women in the organization, but when they got promoted to the C-suite, Riza, please, this is the last. don't promote me anymore.
Why do you think that is?
There's still that feeling that I have other priorities. That
Is it
the
this
home is the family,
children,
children,
Okay.
etc., are still the priority. And there's still a bit of that traditional role of women. And some women, unfortunately, at least in my generation, hopefully not in the next generation, still don't want to outshine their
Right.
husbands.
I was going to get to that because that's a big thing. I mean, movies have been with that as a central premise of why there was this difficulty or challenge in the relationship. It's always the ego of the man
The ego.
being trampled upon, and therefore it caused the inevitable quote unquote problems of the marriage of the family. How real is that?
I've seen it happen where a friend of mine who's really smart, really good, passed up roles overseas because of the husband. The husband would be, oh, what about this? What about that? Then she'd realize
He doesn't want
he
it.
doesn't want it.
There you go.
You know, and I've been very lucky because my husband didn't care. No ego problems.
Right.
Because he himself was accomplished, right?
Right,
He was
right.
actually president of a company before I was.
There you go.
So it wasn't an issue for him. But it wasn't just that. From the time my kids were young, you know, if I couldn't go and pick up the report card, he had no issue being the one to do it. I remember one of my friends say, Riza, hang on to your husband. She said like that.
He's a keeper.
Yeah, he's a keeper because I didn't realize there was a party in my daughter's class.
Okay.
And he was the only dad that was
Oh,
there.
wow.
Everybody else was a mom. And he
Wow,
didn't even
kudos
tell
to him.
He didn't
Okay.
even tell me about it.
Okay, because to him it's normal, right?
To him,
it's
it
not
didn't
a big
matter.
deal.
That's right, exactly. And it's not as if he wasn't an executive himself,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. But that's the thing, Riza, because you yourself said it's because he's an accomplished executive, right? Do you think that would matter to someone, to a man who maybe has not reached the heights of success as the wife?
I think it would have for some cases. What I'm observing in my kids' generation is different. The daughter of a friend, very smart, was assigned to the head office overseas, and the husband gave up his job.
Okay.
And he was a head of sales
Oh,
for,
wow. Okay.
for a multinational.
Right.
He gave it up to go with the wife. Our joke was he's the husband. So, and he's perfectly happy to do it. I've seen it many times in my kids' generation. They're very different already. They don't care.
We joke in the house, but we have our son says that, you know, he wants to be a trophy husband. He aspires to be a trophy husband.
Yes,
So
that's what my son says. He was joking that he and his wife were trying to, fight over who gets to stay home.
that's the new aspiration now of the next generation, right?
Yeah.
That is very refreshing. And I think it's also because people are more exposed now, just realizing the importance of, regardless what your gender is, being there for your children. Compared to the previous generations, the boomers, before the boomers, it has something to do with them being silent. I think it's the silent generation because they weren't really talking to their children as they
Yes.
should. I think
Yes.
someone will Google this or chat GPT this, but I think it's called the silent generation prior, that we're not really interacting with their children. But now you see a reverse because there was a statistic once that a lot of the boomers, maybe only a small percentage of the dads would actually have experience changing the diaper of their baby. Now it's totally the opposite.
Yes.
Only a few actually have never done that quote unquote chore. With me, like in our case, with our 10-year-old, my wife never changed the diaper because I would be the one to do it. And she convinced me, you know what the thought was? I do the feeding, you do the cleaning. Okay? So we don't mix the two.
Yep.
And to me, okay, that makes sense. I mean, yes, you carried our son for 9 months and all the labor pains and all that. The least I can do is change our son's diaper. And I would be the one to also feed our baby with a bottle. I actually enjoyed that time in our lives where I got to do that for our son.
Yes. It builds the bond much more, right? I always used to joke that as an original millennial, the way we raised our kids, it was important for us to spend time with them, for example. Although, of course, both of us working, it wasn't as easy. We subconsciously, I guess, it was an unspoken agreement, was we never wanted to miss important occasions. Because you don't want your child to be the only one in the class who had no parent. So if I couldn't make it, he would go. If he couldn't make it, I would go. It was always an equal partnership. And I think that really helped. I'd be asked to talk to a group of aspiring females is my husband was important to my success because he was very supportive. I'd say, how many of you here are married? And then they'll raise their hands. Okay, you don't have a choice. How many of you are not yet married? And when they'd say, I say, okay, you can still change your mind. I said, make sure that whoever you end up with is someone who will be a supportive partner because
Right.
it's important that you're equal partners.
It's the single most important decision you will ever have to make in your life, who you end up spending the rest of your life with.
Yes. And remember, you have to think that when I'm 60 or 70, do I still want to see his face?
Exactly. In your case, you're very lucky because, and I've witnessed this firsthand, not only do you share a common, I guess, path of success on the career front, but you also are both marathon runners up to this day. I mean, in a previous interview that we did when we spent time together, I found out that you finished all of the World Marathon majors. You are a very accomplished runner through the years. And you started, what age again did you start running?
I started running the year I turned 50.
Oh, wow.
My first marathon I ran when I was 51.
51, your first marathon.
Yeah, and I was already CEO then.
Wow.
So all those marathons I ran, I was already the CEO of Sun Life.
Amazing. Running a marathon, sometimes people would say it's like a full-time job just because of the preparation. I'm tempted to ask you how you were able to balance training for a marathon and running your company, but we've seen so much evidence pointing to the fact that a lot of high-powered executives actually, I would say, even use their training as a way to be able to get them to a certain level in thinking that allows them to be able to do just that, right? To lead their companies. So I won't ask you that question. What I want to ask you is, using that as sort of like a tool for you, was there any point in your life where, as you were leading the organization and you lost that ability to train, to condition your body? And did it have an effect on your ability to be able to lead mentally, emotionally, when you didn't have that aspect of the physicality of, just being healthy to sort of aid you in that process of leadership and leading people?
Actually, no. Because you realize when something's important to you, you make time for it. And so I scheduled my training in the same way I scheduled everything else. So I knew I had to train on certain days of the week. I really tried to stick to those days. Sometimes it wasn't possible if I'd have a breakfast meeting, but even my assistant knew, don't schedule early morning meetings.
Because that's when you run.
Because that's when I run.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when I do weights or train or whatever. So she would try to avoid it as much as possible.
What time would you wake up, and what time would you do and how long?
Sometimes I would start running at 5 a.m. Generally, I would start running maybe 5:30, 6. But sometimes as early as 5, I'd already be running so that I'd be at work in time. Wherever I was in the world, I would do it. Even on travel, even on the deck of a ship. I was on a cruise once, and I had to run 16 kilometers.
Because you were training.
Because I was training, yes.
Okay.
So I just ran around and
Wow.
around and around and around and around and around. And so I've run in sub-zero temperatures in Russia.
Wow.
I've run in very hot temperatures elsewhere. I've run in places where I couldn't read the street signs like Japan and China. I just made time for it wherever I was.
Do you think you would have been as successful your 50s onwards if you had not gotten into running?
I don't really know. But one thing I'm sure is it kept me healthy. You hear of so many people once they reach their 60s, and I've seen it in my acquaintances, my friends, they start getting all sorts of health issues. If you're not healthy, it's hard to think. If you're in pain or if you have a medical condition, I find that you're not quite as effective, I guess. That old saying, a healthy mind in a healthy body. I think it's true. And the older you get, the more you realize that health really is wealth. Almost everything else you can probably buy.
Right. On the opposite side of the spectrum, there are people who spend millions of dollars to protect their health. You have the likes of LeBron James.
Yes.
Recently, this guy, Brian Johnson, who is, I think, one of the craziest in the longevity field, spending about $2 million a year just on these longevity protocols. I want to now get into health because, you have a long laundry list of companies that you provide your insight to as a member of their board, as a consultant perhaps. first of all, for those who are listening, I want them to be able to appreciate something that you've shared with me. Because I asked you, what are you busy with now? And this is post being a high-powered CEO. Now you get to share, I guess, your wisdom with so many other companies that now rely on you for your insights. What are the companies that you're helping now? And I want to end that with maxicare. But before maxicare, what are the other companies that you currently work with right now?
I sit on the board of several companies, so Ayala Corporation, BPI, First Philippine Holdings, Finma Corporation, Universal Robina, GoTime Bank, FEU Institute of Technology, maxicare, of course, Sun Life Grepa Financial, BPI Wealth, which is the private bank of BPI. And aside from the companies, I sit on some organizations' boards like Makati Business Club, Philippine Business for Education.
I want to focus on maxicare. I'm trying to appreciate here your whole journey in your career and also being an accomplished marathoner, runner. What would you say is one of the most important things that, in your opinion, you were able to contribute in terms of the direction, possibly, or advice you were able to give as a member of maxicare's board? Not just with your experience with leadership and with Sun Life, but also your experience as someone who has undergone this journey of getting yourself healthier after your 50s.
Well, as a member of maxicare's board, you really are just one of many voices, right? And we give our input on maxicare's strategies, the governance, the operating model. So I wouldn't actually say that I've done anything to change their trajectory because it's a very well-run company, okay, and which provides a very valuable service. So as a member of the board, it's more giving your insights on whatever they present to you. For example, on their conversion to IT, becoming more automated, whatever. I don't think I can claim credit for a lot of the things they do because they thought of those on their own. It's just giving our input. And one thing I can say with maxicare, the service level is really tops. If I needed a medical procedure, I would go to a maxicare primary care center,
right,
rather than a hospital if I can help it, because hospitals are really good, but they do so many things too, right? They have all these people lined up. You go to maxicare primary care center and you're taken care of.
I've experienced it myself. It's seamless because I've done in the big hospitals, I've done in the maxicare primary care clinic. The fact that they specialize in just that, and the whole setup is set up just specifically to provide that kind of service, I think that's the advantage of having that. It is quite interesting to see how the model has also evolved, yes, in terms of the business and how they provide that business and that value to their consumers. What was your opinion on maxicare now having their own primary care clinics?
Oh, I think it's a very good idea. In fact, that's the direction a lot of companies are trying to take in the insurance industry. Either partner with clinics or actually own clinics,
right,
because they find that they can control the cost better, but also the service levels and the quality of care that's being provided. Because most insurance companies want you to be healthy.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
They really want to make sure you're healthy and as healthy as possible, right? I think that really is a global direction.
How do you go towards that direction of from scratch building out more clinics across the country, I would assume? What does that do to an organization? What kind of strain? How difficult doing something like that for the short and medium term?
No, I think it's all about the business case, which I'm sure this happened before I joined the board of maxicare. I'm sure the business case was presented and what it would mean for the company. Understanding what that business case is and how much capital you'd have to put in, how long before you start getting your payback. And once you've done that and assessed all the risks, develop your business plans, then the next thing is ensuring that you're actually delivering and meeting your milestones. And so far, I think maxicare is doing that. So if you're doing that, then you know that, you go ahead with your decision. Now, if it's not working like any other business, then at some point you can make the decision to kill it.
Right.
It's important that you know what your goals are, what your plans are, and that you're executing and you're measuring That's important.
You know, Riza, my only regret with this interview is not we're not doing it in UP where we did our run the last time, because I really enjoyed that. You know, I'd like to sort of summarize this interview. I want to put it in words where like being one with the road. Your career road has been long and it has been quite lucrative. How does that translate to your passion, which is running marathons? Is there a correlation between the kind of discipline that goes into both, and how that really has helped you in your life?
Definitely, there's a correlation. Running a marathon, what I'd always do is I'd have a training plan and I'd execute it to the best of my ability. Like I said, wherever I was in the world, I would run whatever the conditions were. Just like in a business, you need to have a plan and make sure that you're delivering. Most organizations will have the same strategies. It's so easy. Copy the strategy, but it's all about the execution. That's the difference. And being able to execute means that you're committed to what you're doing. And often it means you have to like what you're doing, because if you don't like what you're doing, it's very difficult to drag yourself out of bed in the morning.
Right. So you really like running. It's enjoyable for you.
It's enjoyable for me. But at the same time, I also have a mindset that whatever, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
Right. Because I'm sure there would be mornings where you don't feel like you're getting out of bed, or maybe you have a little bit of a something.
Or it's pouring outside and you don't feel like running. But I've run in signal number 3 conditions.
Wow.
That discipline that you get from running, because you know that if you don't train as you're supposed to, you'll never be able to do it. So I already know how well I'm going to do in a marathon based on how well I've trained. So once I knew I was going to have a really lousy time because I trained for only 6 weeks, for unavoidable reasons. I got sick, I got injured, whatever. So it's the same with initiatives in the office, with things I want to do. If you don't meet your milestones, you'll never be able to deliver. I think that's important to us. The interest is there. I enjoyed what I was doing. Like I said earlier, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, it's going to be hard to get yourself to do it. And even after work, it's important that you stay alive. After you've retired, you continue to be interested in the world around you.
You're still striving at something, right?
You still continue to strive. You still have goals to meet. Just like with running, you keep up with new techniques. I've changed running technique based on what I learned from the coaches. It's important that you continue to have a purpose. You continue to enjoy what you're doing. And the other one about being on the road is you meet so many people. Meeting those other people is, for me, a lot of fun. You meet people from all walks of life. It's also important, whatever stage you're at, but even more so as you get older. You need to continue to have that purpose, enjoy what you do, keep up with what's going on around you, keep up your social connections, and think young. Always think young. In my mind, I'm 40.
Okay.
I don't think I'm too old to do something.
And with the pace by which you run, I know that you are definitely 40, because you just ran a race. You told me a while ago there are about 2,000 people. You were in the top 100.
You have to finish, first 100 to finish. I couldn't believe it. This is an all-women race, okay? No males, okay?
Okay.
All-women race. I couldn't believe it.
But my goodness, I mean, top 100 out of 2,000, that's not bad.
It's not bad, yes.
I think maybe most of those women were probably in their 20s.
20s, 30s, 40s. There's some women who are in their 50s who were also in the first 100 to finish.
Okay.
And the only reason we knew we were among the first 100 to finish was we got the flower at the finish line.
Oh,
they said flowers for the first 100 finishers for every distance category, which I thought was such a nice touch.
Yes.
Right? So when I got it, I was like, I have one. You mean I made it?
Wow.
I think that's important. Don't let yourself get into the stage of, I'm too old already, I can't do it. I mean, even the clothes you wear, make sure that you're not wearing 20-year-old clothes.
You're a testament to someone who has not just lived a full life, but someone who continues to live. I think you still have something to do. Every race is an opportunity to be able to prove to yourself that, yes, you can still do it. Yes, you still love the sport. Receiving that flower at the end is a sign to others and to yourself that, hey,
you're never too old.
Never. And that is very inspiring to me, and as I'm sure it is to a lot of people who are watching and listening to this interview. Riza, you're such an inspiration. I thank you for what you've done, and also being who you are, because you're such an inspiration to so many
Thank you.
people.
That's really very kind. Thank you.
Not just to women, but to men and women who are learning from you till this day. I feel like the more races and the more people that you talk to, I think your impact is going to be stretched out for so many more years down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Riza. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible interview. I really appreciated all of your thoughts. That was Riza Mantaring. Thank you so much, Riza.
And thanks to John. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.